a concrete step in the direction that millions of Americans wanted to see. Already 40 days into the shutdown. Let's get some perspective now from some reporting from Samantha-Jo Ross. She's a national political correspondent from the Washington Examiner. Samantha-Jo, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much. So this is obviously a huge development. Democrats didn't get their two main goals, and that was extending the expiring health insurance subsidies and ending those Trump-era rescissions. So obviously they are losers in that particular part of this deal. And, progressives who thought that this party was finally holding firm really do see this as pulling back under pressure. And that definitely risks deflating energy heading into 2026. Now, here is where they did succeed. They were able to put back those healthcare back at the center of the national conversation. And, as you mentioned earlier, the December vote on those subsidies does guarantee another fight over this issue. And Democrats really do believe that they can win on this one. They also believed that, federal employees that were fired during the shutdown, they're going to be able to get that full pay. And that was, a huge win for senators like Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia, where they have so many federal workers. Both sides are just trying to, hedge their bets on who's going to come out on top, obviously, here.
Yeah, I was listening to Independent Senator Angus King from Maine saying that they, as a body, were closer to the, as he put it, possibility of working on the ACA. Obviously, there's certainly recipients of that are left with some doubts, especially when they hear that. I'm wondering if you could just give it what your reporting shows on the timing, all of this. I mean, how soon, based on what you've seen thus far, how soon could we see the government reopen? And what needs to happen before we get to that point?
Well, as we know, the Senate is going to have to vote tomorrow. They could do this relatively quickly, or they could do it slowly if somebody like Senator Rand Paul decides to hold up this process. Then they're going to boot it over to the House of Representatives. And as we know, all of these folks are now rushing back to Washington, D.C. And many of them are going to be facing the same very problems that many Americans are dealing with. And that is the airports. They're going to be dealing with major delays. And I really do believe that this is one of the major issues that caused a lot of these Democrats to come to the table. Over the last couple of days, I've been reporting on the FAA, these air traffic controllers telling me that the cuts at the airports were not actually making a huge difference for them, telling me that they're dealing with 25 aircraft in 1 hour. They're not getting any breaks. And then on top of that, you have, some of these air traffic controllers who simply cannot afford to continue working. Unfortunately had to leave and do other second jobs. So I truly believe that is going to make a lot of this very complicated over the next couple of days. So we're going to have to watch and see how exactly that's all going to play out.
Because you've covered this very deeply, I'm wondering if you could just offer a sort of a reality check. I heard from Sean Duffy earlier this morning in his interviews say that, even when they flip the government switch where it opens again, there's still the potential for residual impact because there's so many air traffic controllers who have essentially retired early in some cases. So I'm wondering if you could just tell us exactly what challenges should Americans who are perhaps planning Thanksgiving travel, can they expect if they plan to take to the skies, even in a government that's open again?
Oh, absolutely. This crisis is going to be felt, even when the government reopens. FAA rather, was dealing with a major crisis with staffing. And a lot of that was really, put into the spotlight after the DCA crash in January. It was very clear that there were not enough air traffic controllers. These people are overworked. Many of them tell me that they are underpaid. This is not an issue that is going to be resolved overnight. Of course, Secretary Duffy has really led the charge in trying to, do these hiring surges. But you have to remember that it takes a really long time for a lot of the people who are trainees to actually make their way to being fully certified air traffic controllers. So even if there is a surge, at the level there is right now, it's going to take a while. So, Americans are going to have to really be patient as they are waiting. If they're waiting on the tarmac, just know a lot of it is going to have to do with you being safe. And unfortunately, I'm hearing from a lot of people who are air traffic controllers that they are, worried that this is going to hurt them with recruitment. Nobody wants to go into a job where they're going to be working 6-day weeks, 10 to 12-hour days, and not be paid. That a shutdown could happen at any time, and this might happen again. So, this certainly may have implications moving into the future.
And then finally, in your reporting, what kind of questions do you expect to have for lawmakers, especially some of those Democrats that cross party lines and that independent? They certainly, when we heard from them after their vote, they certainly painted it in a way that perhaps some of their constituents won't see it, that they might see it as caving in.
Yeah, I think that's certainly something that they're going to have to be ready to answer over the next couple of days and weeks, whether, this was caving. As we heard from those Democratic senators earlier tonight, they believed that this was a win, that they were, no people were no longer, suffering if once the government is opening, that they were getting phone calls, they were getting, emails from distressed constituents. So they believe in their minds that this is a win. But the big question for them is, with this healthcare subsidy fight, is this the fight that they're going to want to carry into 2026? We saw healthcare take a huge focus during the last couple of election cycles. So they're going to have to figure out whether that's a winning message for them. The ACA subsidy fight is something that they're also going to be really using. And Republicans, too, are going to have to figure out how they're going to message on this. We know that the ACA subsidies seem to be very popular with voters. So, what's going to happen next, nobody knows. But, all eyes are going to be on that vote in December. I can tell you that.
One thing is for certain, healthcare will be a theme that will dominate midterm election ads for sure. And we know that you will be watching that closely. Samantha-Jo Roth, thank you so much for sharing your reporting with us tonight.
Thank you.
Of course.